On December 25, 1991, under the cold Moscow sky, a red flag adorned with a hammer and sickle was lowered from the Kremlin for the last time. For 70 years, it had been the symbol of a mighty superpower, an empire that stretched across 11 time zones, commanded a formidable nuclear arsenal, and challenged America for global dominance. Then, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. How could a nation that put the first man in space, a country built on the promise of a utopian future, simply cease to exist? The answer wasn't found on a battlefield. It was written in the empty grocery stores, in the silent, rusting factories, and in the very economic DNA of the Soviet Union itself. This is the story of the fatal economic mistake that doomed a superpower. Following the devastation of World War II, the Soviet Union emerged as an industrial titan. Through sheer force of will, a centrally planned economy had transformed an agrarian society into a powerhouse. They built sprawling cities, forged nuclear weapons, and launched Sputnik, striking fear and awe into the Western world. The promise was seductive, an economy without the chaos of capitalism, where the state, in its infinite wisdom, would provide for everyone, eliminating waste and inequality. But behind the grand parades on Red Square and the proud displays of military hardware, a different reality was taking hold. The system designed to control everything was beginning to fail at providing the most basic things. The heart of the Soviet economy was an agency called Gosplan. Imagine a single office in Moscow trying to decide the price of every nail, the production quota for every shoe factory in Siberia, and the number of buttons needed for every shirt in Ukraine. This was the fatal flaw, the knowledge problem. In a market economy, prices are signals. They are millions of conversations happening at once, telling producers what consumers want, what is scarce, and what is abundant. The Soviets abolished these signals. Their planners were flying blind. Consider the simple act of buying bread. For a family in Kyiv, it wasn't a matter of walking to the corner store. It was an ordeal. An elderly woman, Anya, might spend 3 hours in a queue, her feet aching in the cold, for a single coarse loaf of bread. Sometimes, after hours of waiting, the shelves would be empty. The state had decreed that the bakery produce exactly 500 loaves, no more, no less, regardless of the town's actual need. This wasn't a rare crisis, it was daily life. The result was an economy of absurd contrasts, chronic shortages of essentials like soap, shoes, and toilet paper existed alongside massive, inexplicable surpluses of useless goods. A factory might produce millions of left-footed boots because the plan only specified pairs of boots and didn't account for left and right. This wasn't just inefficient, it was a quiet, grinding erosion of the people's trust in the system. While citizens like Anya struggled for bread, the state was pouring trillions of rubles into a machine of unimaginable power, the military-industrial complex. The Cold War demanded parity with the United States, and the cost was staggering. Missiles were built, tanks rolled off assembly lines in endless numbers, and nuclear submarines prowled the oceans. This was the great guns over butter dilemma. Every ruble spent on a MiG-29 fighter jet was a ruble not spent on a new hospital, a modern tractor for a farm, or repairing a crumbling apartment block in Leningrad. While propaganda posters showed smiling, healthy workers, the reality was a civilian economy starved of resources and innovation. The Soviet Union could send a probe to Venus, but it couldn't reliably manufacture a decent washing machine. The empire was bleeding itself dry, not from war, but from the relentless preparation for one. These are the kinds of forgotten economic stories that have shaped the modern world in profound ways. If you believe understanding history is key to understanding today, make sure you subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell. We have many more deep dives like this one coming up, and you won't want to miss them. By the 1970s and 80s, the cracks were impossible to ignore. The initial momentum of industrialization had faded, replaced by what became known as the era of stagnation. The official economy produced mediocrity and scarcity, so human ingenuity did what it always does. It went underground. A massive, illegal black market emerged. If you wanted a real pair of American blue jeans, a Beatles album, or even quality meat, you didn't go to the state-run GOOM department store. You found a fartsovschik, a black marketeer who could get you anything for the right price. This shadow economy wasn't just for luxuries. It became essential for survival, a clear sign that the state system had failed its people. In 1985, a new leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, recognized the impending catastrophe. He introduced his landmark policies of perestroika, economic restructuring, and glasnost, openness. He tried to reform the system, to give it a human face, but it was too little, too late. The foundations were rotten. Opening the windows to a crumbling house doesn't fix the structure. It just lets the wind blow it down faster. The new freedoms of glasnost allowed people to finally voice their frustrations, and decades of pent-up anger came flooding out. The economic chaos of perestroika only deepened the crisis. The collapse, when it came, was swift. The lowering of that red flag was not the cause of the end, but the confirmation of it. The Soviet Union died because its economy was a fiction. It was built on a flawed premise that a handful of men in an office could replace the wants, needs, and dreams of millions. The lessons from the rubble are stark and timeless. They teach us that an economy without real price signals is an economy without a compass. They show the danger of prioritizing military might over the well-being of citizens. And most importantly, they serve as the 20th century's most expensive and tragic lesson on economic reality. It is a lesson the world cannot afford to forget. The fall of the Soviet Union offers many warnings. For you, what is the single most important lesson from this story that the world needs to remember today? Share your perspective in the comments below. Let's start a conversation.